When the sheriff shot his dog over a fence line dispute, the town laughed behind closed doors. But they didn't realize what they'd done. They broke the last honest man in the county, and when he buried the dog, he buried his badge too. What came next wasn't loud. It was quiet, deliberate, and changed everything. If stories like these speak to you, hit subscribe and like so this one can reach more people. Now let's begin. I'm Jed Malone, 52 years old, a rancher out past the Black River. Most folks knew me as a former deputy, but that was years back. Now it was just me, the cattle, and Copper, my loyal dog. Copper was my shadow, always by my side on quiet evenings. He was more than a dog, he was pretty much my only company. Out here, far from town. One morning, the sun barely up, I saw the problem. My fence line along Hackett's creek bed was busted. 3 posts splintered, wire snapped clean through. Hackett was Sheriff Will Hackett, my old partner. We'd ridden together, but he'd changed. I grabbed my tools, figuring I'd fix it before his cattle got through and avoid trouble. I was hammering a new post when I heard a rider. Hackett. He stopped maybe 20 feet away, his hat tipped back. He'd been drinking. His eyes had that cloudy look. "Malone," he said, real slow. "Figured you'd be out here. Your damn fence, Jed." I didn't argue. "Fence was fine yesterday, Will. Looks like something ran through it hard." He swung a leg over, dismounted, and kicked a busted post. "Don't matter how it broke. It's your responsibility. My prize bull nearly got out this morning. That bull's worth more than your whole ranch." Copper, who'd been sitting by my feet, let out a low growl. It wasn't a vicious sound, just a warning. Hackett stiffened. His hand went to his holster. "That dog needs to be put down, Jed. Safety measure." I saw it clearly. "Will, he's just." He drew his pistol. Quick. The shot cracked, loud and flat. Copper yelped once. A terrible choked sound. And then he fell. He hit the dust by my boots. Just like that. Hackett holstered his gun, calm as could be. "See? Safety. Now, about that fence, Jed." I didn't look at him. I couldn't. I knelt down instead, by Copper. His eyes were wide, staring up at nothing. A dark stain spread. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I just knelt there, looking at him, the dust on his fur, the stillness. Hackett might as well have been a ghost. The sun was just breaking when I started digging. I carried Copper's body to the old oak tree on the small rise. It was the tallest tree for miles, a lone sentinel. I picked a spot in its shadow. The ground was hard, but I dug. Each shovel of earth was just a shovel of earth. When it was deep enough, I lowered him in. He looked small, curled up. I reached into my pocket, my fingers finding the cold, flat metal, my old deputy badge. It was dull, scratched, from years in a drawer. I'd quit because of Hackett, because of the way he twisted things, the way he looked the other way when money spoke louder than justice. I'd turned it in, walked away, done with it all. I looked at the badge for a long moment. It still felt heavy. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who believed in the law. That man felt 1,000,000 miles away now. I laid the badge carefully next to Copper, just beside his paw. It felt like burying a piece of myself, a final, quiet severing. I covered them both up, smooth as I could. The dirt piled up, a small mound. The sun climbed higher. I left the shovel leaning against the oak, then walked back to the house. Didn't look back. The porch creaked. The house was too quiet now. My steps echoed. I poured coffee. It tasted like ash. Something inside me had shifted. Not a loud thing, no rage, just a deep, cold quiet where something had been before. A few days later, I drove the old pickup into town. The air felt thick. Everyone knew. That was the first thing I noticed. The quiet. Pete, who ran the general store, kept his head down. His usual booming greeting was missing. He just nodded when I walked in. I picked up flour and coffee. Mrs. Gable, the schoolteacher, glanced at me, then quickly looked away. The blacksmith, Silas, kept his back to me, hammer blows echoing too loudly. It was like I was invisible. I heard the whispers, not directly, but you catch things in a small town. 2 ranchers by the watering trough, talking low. One of them, I heard him say, "Shouldn't have let the dog bark like that." The other laughed, a nervous sound. They saw me. They just kept their backs turned. It wasn't just Hackett. It was them too. All of them. They had seen, or heard, and they had chosen to look the other way. Chose silence. That was the thing that settled in me, heavy as stones. Hackett was just a man with a badge and a gun, but they were the town. Their silence was worse. I paid Pete. He still didn't look me in the eye. On the way out, I picked up rope, nails, and a thick blank ledger. Pete looked at the ledger, then at me. His face was unreadable. I didn't say anything. My hands were steady, My thoughts felt clear, sharp. I knew what I had to do. Not in a way anyone would shout about. It would be quiet. It would be deliberate. Back home, the house still felt too big, too empty. I pulled out the blank ledger. It was a solid book, dark cover, the pages thick and clean. I opened it. It felt important. I picked up a pencil, sharpened it. I started with a name, Pete. Next to it I wrote, *General Store, avoided eye contact, whispered with Johnson. It wasn't a list of enemies, it was a list of those who had stayed silent, those who had turned their heads, a list of complicity. I wrote Silas's name next, *Blacksmith, back turned, then Mrs. Gable's name. I remembered a winter storm years ago, her buggy overturned. I found her, shivering, fixed her wheel, got her home. She'd thanked me 100 times. Now she wouldn't meet my gaze. I wrote, *teacher, looked away. Winter storm, 03, the bartender, Mike. He used to give me a free whiskey on Friday nights. Said I was the only honest lawman. I wrote his name, *bartender, poured for Hackett. There were others. Men I'd helped, men I'd stood by. Each name was a memory, a small betrayal. It felt like mapping a landscape, laying out the fault lines. This wasn't about revenge with guns and shouting. This was about something else. Holding up a mirror, about truth. The cold, hard facts of how things were. The pencil scratched against the paper, filling the pages, name by quiet name. The quiet in the house felt different now, full of purpose, a slow, deliberate purpose. After a few more days I started noticing him, a boy, maybe 10 years old. He'd appear near the fence line, down where the creek ran shallow, always alone. He'd just stand there, sometimes for an hour, watching my cattle or the water. He was quiet, real quiet. Folks said he was an orphan, lost his family to fever. He lived with old Mrs. Finch. At first I didn't do anything. My own troubles felt big enough. But then one afternoon I saw him squinting in the hot sun. I drew a bucket of fresh water and walked down to the fence. He didn't move, just watched. His eyes were wide, wary. "Hot day," I said, holding out the dipper. "Figured you might be thirsty." He looked at the water, then at my face. He didn't say anything, just took the dipper, real slow, and drank it all down. Then gave it back. He still didn't speak. I nodded. We stood there, listening to the cicadas. After that he started coming closer to the barn. Always quiet, just watching. Sometimes he'd sit by the chicken coop. One day, I found him trying to coax a hen out of its nest. He was so gentle. I knelt beside him, showed him how to offer grain, how to talk to them soft. He mimicked my movements, his small fingers careful. He started helping me, filling water troughs, collecting eggs. He never spoke, but he communicated with gestures, a nod or shake, pointing at things I hadn't noticed. We had a rhythm, a comfortable quiet. One evening, I went inside and pulled out Copper's old training whistle, carved from oak, worn smooth. I brought it out, showed it to him. He looked at it, then at me. I put it in his hand. "This was Copper's," I said. He always knew when I blew it. The boy's fingers closed around the whistle. He tucked it into his pocket. It wasn't much, but it felt like a small, quiet piece of loyalty, coming back to me. He was quiet, but he was present. He was watching. After a while, I started riding into town more often. Not just for supplies. I still saw Pete and Silas. Still got the averted glances. But I wasn't there for them. I was just observing. I'd sit on the bench outside the saloon, sipping sarsaparilla, watching. Hackett usually held court in there. I listened. It wasn't long before I started seeing things that didn't quite fit. The way Hackett would lean in close to council members, a quick, almost invisible exchange of hands. The way he'd suddenly show up at land auctions, and the parcels always went to the same buyers, often too cheap. Things I'd suspected when I was his partner, but dismissed. Now, they stood out sharp and clear. I started gathering records. Not in any obvious way, just buying old newspapers, asking Pete for old county ledgers, looking up public notices. I wasn't looking for a fight. I was looking for clarity, for exposure. I just wanted to hold a light up, make people see what was happening. Back at the ranch, I went into the old barn. In a corner, under canvas, was an old wooden chest. My deputy chest. I opened it. Inside were the files I'd kept. Old maps, land deeds, case notes from unsolved thefts that vanished from official records. A box of evidence from a mining claim dispute that was dropped right after Hackett bought a new saddle. I dusted them off, spread them on the workbench. The names on the deeds were the same names in my ledger. The dates matched Hackett's spending. It was all there. The quiet rot I'd always felt but never proved. It wasn't explosive, not yet. Just a simmering certainty. One night, the wind howled fierce. I was inside reading when I heard it. A faint creak from the barn. Not the usual settling sounds, but something deliberate. I put my book down, picked up my rifle, and walked out. The moon was a sliver. The barn door was ajar, swinging on one hinge, latch broken. I stepped inside. It was dark, but I could smell the dust, the disturbed hay. Nothing seemed touched at first. Then I saw it, tacked to the main support beam, a note, pinned with a rusty nail. Just 3 words, "Stay out of town business." My hand tightened on the rifle. It wasn't a threat to scare me away. It was a confirmation. They knew. They saw what I was doing. This wasn't a starting pistol. This was a point of no return. It just was. I pulled the note down, crumpled it, walked back outside, found my tools. I boarded up the barn tighter than a drum, adding planks, new heavy bolts. I sent Nathan to stay with Mrs. Miller, an old widow I trusted. Didn't tell him why, just that he'd be safer there. He looked at me, wide-eyed, but nodded. Back in the quiet of my house, I went to the old desk, pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside was my father's leather-bound journal. He'd been sheriff here, a long time ago. His neat script filled the pages. Old laws, notes on a good lawman. I opened it to a blank page. The old ink had faded. I picked up my own pen and started writing. Not about what had happened, not about anger. I started writing a new set of laws, or maybe just a reminder of the old ones. The true ones. The ones that had been forgotten. The mayor, old Thomas Albright, lived in the biggest house in town. I rode over late one afternoon, the sun low. I tied my horse out back, came in through the kitchen. Martha, his housekeeper, looked at me surprised, but just nodded. The mayor was in his study, a pipe in his hand, county reports on his desk. He looked up when I came in, his eyes widening. He knew why I was there. "Jed," he said, voice strained. "To what do I owe this visit?" I didn't sit, just placed the ledger, open, on his desk. Pointed to names, dates, transactions, records of rigged land sales, documented bribes, missing schoolhouse funds. Names he'd recognize, numbers that spoke for themselves. He leaned forward, pipe forgotten. His face went pale, then mottled red. He put a hand over his mouth. "Good God, Jed," he whispered. You got it all, don't you?" I didn't say anything, just let him look. He knew Hackett had been doing things, but seeing it laid out, plain as day, was different. It made it real. He sighed, looking old, tired. "You want to take back the badge, Jed? You do it with blood. That's the only way a man like Hackett gets moved." I looked at him. "No," I said. My voice was steady. "I'll do it with truth." He leaned back, a deep sigh. "Truth," he scoffed with weary despair. "That only works, Jed, if anyone bothers to listen." I picked up my ledger, closed it. "They will," I said. I turned and walked out, leaving him there in the gathering dusk. He hadn't said no. He hadn't said yes. He just looked afraid. That was enough, for now. The next morning, before the town was fully awake, I rode in. Nathan was with Mrs. Miller, safe. I went straight to the old bulletin board outside the general store. It was where folks posted notices about lost cows. I took new nails, good stout ones. I took the copied pages from my ledger. Names, dates, crooked dealings. Not all of them, just enough. Land sales, schoolhouse funds, a few bribes. I nailed them up, carefully, one sheet after another. My hand didn't shake. I didn't sign it. Everyone would know. By mid-morning, a small crowd gathered. They read, faces blank at first, then shifting. Some pointed. Old man Johnson ripped a page down, face red, then stomped off. But he didn't rip them all down. Others just walked away, shoulders slumped, faces pale. The whispers started. Not nervous, but angry. "Jed's stirring things up," I heard someone say. "He's gone too far." I watched, then mounted my horse and rode home. The air felt charged, like before a storm. I knew something was coming. That night, sitting on my porch, I saw the orange glow against the horizon. My barn. Fire. My gut twisted. I ran faster than I had in years. Flames were licking high. The smell of smoke, thick and acrid, filled my lungs. I got to the barn, coughing, pulling open the gate to the animal pens. Horses rearing, cows bellowing. I slapped them, yelled, forced them out, one by one, into the pasture. The heat was searing. I grabbed the last calf, dragged it out as the roof collapsed. I saved the livestock, barely. My barn was a smouldering ruin. This was no warning shot. This was meant to bury me. The dawn after the fire was grey, choked with ash and charred wood. The barn was a skeleton, still smoking. I sat on the porch step, watching it, cold in my bones. Then I heard a rustle. Nathan. He He stood by the burnt remains, his small figure outlined against the ruin. Mrs. Miller must have let him come back. He looked at me, then the barn, then back at me. His eyes wide, sad. He walked over to me, slow and deliberate. He held something small and dark. He held it out. Copper's old collar, singed, blackened, but still recognizable. He must have found it in the debris. The leather felt brittle in my palm. The metal tag was almost melted, but I could make out the faint letters. Copper. I closed my hand around it. It was like feeling his warmth, his fur, his weight against my leg, all over again. A deep, aching quiet settled in me. Nathan sat beside me, knees to his chin. He didn't say anything, just sat. His presence, quiet and steady, felt like a grounding force. He'd come back to the ruins, to me. I unwrapped the collar. Too small now, the leather shrunken. I walked inside, into the quiet house. I went to the mantelpiece, above the cold fireplace. I wrapped Copper's collar in clean linen, then placed it carefully on the mantel, next to a smooth creek stone. It was a silent act. Grief was still there, a dull ache, but beneath it was resolve. They thought they could burn me out. They didn't know. This wasn't about quitting anymore. It was about seeing things through, all the way through. The old chapel sat on the edge of town, dusty and abandoned, windows boarded, steeple leaning. I sent out word, quiet as I could, through Mrs. Miller and a few others. A meeting, not a riot. At sundown, 2 days after the fire, I stood by the chapel door, watching. Only about half the town showed up. Some faces were worried, some nervous from my ledger. Hackett wasn't there, not yet. I walked to the front, to the old dusty pulpit. The air was still and heavy. "Evening, folks," I said. My voice echoed a little. "Thank you for coming." I didn't shout, just spoke plain. "You all know why we're here. You know about the fire, you know about Copper, and you know about what's been happening in this town." I laid out the evidence, piece by piece. Copies of rigged land sales, records of missing school funds, notes from my father's old files, names, dates, amounts, simple facts. I told them about the mayor, how he knew, but was too afraid to act. "You gave a badge to a man who kills dogs," I said, low and steady, "takes bribes, sells your land. He's made a mockery of the law. I aim to take it back. Not by gun, not by violence. That's Hackett's way. I aim to take it back by vote, by truth." It was quiet then, just the sound of someone shifting in a pew, not a roaring speech, just a man, in a dusty chapel, laying out the plain facts. It felt heavy, heavy with everything that had happened, everything lost, a gamble, I knew, but the only way. I finished speaking, and just as the silence settled, the chapel doors swung open with a bang. Hackett stood there, silhouetted against the last of the evening light, 3 deputies behind him. He looked like a bull, shoulders wide, face red. "Jed Malone," he bellowed, his voice thick with rage. "You're under arrest, inciting a riot, spreading lies. That fire, Jed, we know who set it." I didn't move. "You'll need a warrant, Sheriff," I said, calm, "and charges, properly filed." He scoffed. "I don't need nothing from you. Deputies, take him." 2 men moved forward, but hesitated, looking at the silent crowd. Hackett's face contorted. "You deaf?" I said, "Move." I stepped down from the pulpit. "No need," I said. I walked past the deputies, past Hackett, my stride even. "I'll come willingly, but I'm bringing my evidence. And we'll do this by the book, the law, Sheriff, the same law you taught me." He seemed thrown. He'd expected a fight, a reason to shoot, not this, not me just walking, calmly towards the jail. I had copies of everything tucked into my coat. The moment I stepped into his jail, the small, cramped office, it changed. It wasn't his jail anymore. It was a courtroom. I held them to their own rules, the very rules they had twisted and ignored. It wasn't about violence, it was about strategy, and I knew the rules better than he did. The hearing wasn't in a real courtroom. It was out in the town square, under the hot sun. County officials had ridden in to oversee it. Hackett stood on one side, flanked by deputies, red-faced and yelling. I stood on the other, just me. The townspeople gathered, a wide circle of faces, some grim. Nathan was there too, by Mrs. Miller. I spoke first, not for long, just laid out the facts, calm and steady, details of the bribes, land deals, missing funds. I spoke about the fire, the note. I didn't blame, just stated. Then witnesses came forward. Silas, the blacksmith, told them about Hackett's strange payments for town work. Mrs. Gable, the schoolteacher, spoke quietly about the missing school wing money. Even Nathan stepped forward. He didn't speak, but held up a child's drawing. A man with a star, a gun, a small dark dog fallen at his feet. The sheriff, Copper, the truth, drawn with a child's hand. Hackett yelled, called them liars, pounded his fist. He sweated and blustered and contradicted himself until his face was purple. He made a fool of himself. He couldn't handle the quiet truth. The county officials deliberated in the shade. Then they came back. The verdict was quiet, delivered formally. Sheriff William Hackett was removed from office. Immediately. Then the unexpected part. They turned to me. Jedediah Malone, the official said. Given your past service and your presentation of evidence, we are appointing you interim lawman for this county. A gasp went through the crowd. I didn't move. The sun beat down, baking the dust. The badge felt heavy in the county official's hand, gleaming in the sun. He held it out to me. Hackett had been taken away, muttering curses. The townspeople looked at me, some with awe, some with a strange hope. It was a moment where I could have taken it, taken the power back. I looked at the badge, the same design as my old one. A star, a symbol, but it could also be a cage. I thought about Copper, the fire, the quiet fear in townspeople's eyes. This wasn't about wearing a badge. Not for me, not anymore. Thank you, I said. My voice was steady. But I can't take it. The official blinked. Malone, are you sure? I'm sure, I said. I don't want power. I want peace, for this town, for myself. I looked out at the crowd. I saw Daniel Jenkins standing near the edge, a quiet, steady farmer, always honest. He had helped me move livestock out of the burning barn. I pointed to him. Daniel Jenkins, I said. He's a good man, honest, fair. He's what this town needs. Daniel looked shocked. He tried to protest, but the officials were already looking him over. They asked him a few questions. He answered simply. They nodded. It wasn't a long discussion. Within the hour, the badge was pinned to Daniel's shirt. He looked overwhelmed but determined. I didn't stay for the congratulations. I just turned and walked away. Walked out of the town square, leaving the dusty circle behind me. I went home. The barn was still a ruin, but it could be rebuilt. I started gathering wood, making plans. The quiet life I'd had before was coming back. But it wasn't isolated anymore. The town had changed, and so had I. Months passed. The new barn stood tall, smelling of pine. The cattle grazed peacefully. Life had settled back into its rhythm, a different rhythm now. Daniel Jenkins was a good sheriff. Quiet, but he listened. Things in town started to straighten out, slowly, quietly. I found myself more often up on the small hill overlooking the pastures, under the old oak tree. The mound of earth where Copper was buried was still there, softened by rain, grown over with new grass. Nathan came with me sometimes. He still didn't speak, but his presence was a language all its own. We'd sit there, side by side, just watching the sky, the fields, the way the light shifted. One afternoon I brought something with me, a new collar, new leather, soft and strong. I'd had it made special in town. I took it out of the wrapping. Engraved on the small metal tag, shiny and bright, were two names, Copper and Nathan. I laid the new collar carefully beside the small headstone I'd set up, a flat river stone with a faint copper sheen. Nathan leaned over, reading the names with his finger. He looked at me, a small smile playing on his lips. I smiled back. We didn't need to speak. Some things don't need shouting. They just need to be done. The quiet healing of the town, like the quiet rebuilding of my barn, had begun. Slowly, steadily.